Once upon a time, there was a very wealthy king named Aduko. King Aduko was a very wealthy and prominent king, known far and wide for his massive wealth and leadership. He was married to a beautiful queen named Chitunu. The king and the queen have been married for 14 years, expectantly believing the gods, until the gods finally blessed them with a beautiful daughter, and they cherished her with all their hearts. But as the king and the queen grew older, it became obvious that they could not have another child, so they loved the princess dearly. The king was to hand over his kingdom to his daughter, and whoever she marries will support her in ruling the kingdom. This made his daughter very saucy and disrespectful. She would talk to the palace guards rudely and look down on everyone around her. Her father, the king, had observed her character towards her future subjects. He called her into his chambers and asked her to sit down. "My daughter," he stated, "I've watched you grow into a beautiful maiden, and your beauty is truly mesmerizing. But your arrogance and cruelty would not make you a good queen. It would rather lead you down a treacherous path. I want to tell you a story about a princess like yourself, and I hope you change after hearing this story." "In a beautiful land called Zambali," he began, "where there were lush green trees and beautiful rivers, there lived a beautiful princess named Udi. Udi was like a fairy tale beauty. Her hair was as lush as the green forest of the savannah, her eyes like the shining stars of the night sky. Her skin was soft and radiant as the brightest shade of mahogany, and her figure was very eye-catching. She was indeed blessed by the gods as a princess, but she was very arrogant and vain. Every day, Udi would stroll aimlessly around the village with her entourage of maidens, disrespecting everyone she came across, regardless of their age. As she walks through the village, a foreman would go ahead of her and announce her coming. Everyone is expected to come out of their huts to kneel before her and bow their heads, saying, "Long live the Princess of Zambili." Anyone who dares disobey the order of the princess will be stripped and caned by the guards. The village elders had all complained about her unruly character to the king, but the king always turns a blind eye, since she was his favorite daughter. One sunny afternoon, whilst Udi was going about the village with her entourage, she came across a beautiful maiden returning from the stream. The maiden was very beautiful that the young men around turned their heads to admire her as she walked past. This angered Princess Udi greatly. She believed herself to be the most beautiful girl in the village and was worthy of all the male attention. Just as the maiden approached the princess to bow in greetings, the princess pulled her by her hair and her water pot shattered. She ordered her guards to lash her in public as everyone watched. The whole villagers looked at the princess in astonishment as they wondered how arrogantly vain and petty she was. I wonder the fate of whoever would be unfortunate to be her husband, they thought. One pleasant evening, as Udi was on one of her casual strolls, she saw an old woman sitting by the road, weak from her work from the farm, with her load bundled together in a small basket. As she sat by the side of the road, panting and sweating, Udi approached her and began to mock her. "Wrinkled old woman, why are you sitting by the roadside? Are you also as homeless as you are wrinkled?" she jeered. The old woman looked at her and smiled weakly. "Young maiden, why are you so mean? I am an old woman, tired and weak. Won't you at least help me carry my load and assist me back home?" the old woman asked. "Who are you calling young maiden? Don't you know that I am a princess? Your princess. You ought to bow to me. Now bow down, you old foolish woman." The old woman looked at her and immediately transformed into a witch. "Princess Udi, you are wicked and arrogant, and you must learn to be humble and sufficient. From now onward, you will be cursed until you learn to be kind and considerate to others." Udi immediately transformed into a blind beggar. All her beautiful clothes and accessories were replaced by rags. Her maids and guards were nowhere to be found, and she became stuck with only a cane to guide her. She called out for help, but nobody responded. Udi began to tap her cane and grope helplessly as she walked, crying out for anyone to assist her, but she truly was alone. Udi continued tapping her stick until she came to a small hut by the wayside. She managed to get into the hut before it began to rain heavily. Udi sat lonely as she wept, scared for her life that anything might happen to her and no one would know of her end. That night, as Udi slept, the old witch came to her in her dream. "Princess Udi," she shouted, "are you having a palatable experience?" she asked. Udi cried as she answered no, begging the old witch to free her of her spell. But the witch refused, stating that most of the people she treated like dirt had worse experience, and until she learns to appreciate others, she will continue to remain a blind, dirty beggar. Udi woke up the next morning and took her cane, tapping her way to the village market square, where she sat and asked for alms to feed, but no one would give her heed. At the end of the market day, Udi was frustrated, hungry, and tired, as only one person turned to give her alms, and the meal she managed to get was already stale. She slept in the market under a table that night because she could not locate the old hut from last night, and the hut seems haunted by the old witch, she thought to herself. As she slept that night, the witch yet again appeared to her, asking how her day went and if she enjoyed her stale food. Udi woke up with a startled feet as she began to cry. Udi again sat at her spot the next day to beg for alms, but no one even blinked her way. She left the market tapping her stick until she got to a crossroad. On getting there, she heard voices of people chatting as they passed. help me, please," she shouted with all her might, hoping to get the attention of those passing by. What happened to you, my dear? A voice responded. Udi was shocked, as it was the most pleasing and appealing voice she has ever heard. What happened to you? Why are you here? Who are you? And why are you left alone to wander all by yourself? The voice asked again, waking her from her reverie. Udi wanted to brag about her status of being a wealthy princess, but the spell that the old witch placed on her hindered her tongue from uttering a word. I can see that you are all alone and stranded, the stranger said to Udi. My name is Kalada. I am the son of Jegede, the esteemed village hunter. I am headed home with my folks. Would you need me to assist you with anything? He asked. I'm so sorry to bother you, Kalada, but I'm stranded, Princess Udi answered. I have nobody to tend to or cater for me. I have nowhere to lay my head, and I will greatly appreciate it if you can assist me. Kalada was moved and felt deep sympathy for Udi and decided to help her. He carried her home to his parents and explained to them how he found Udi. His parents were warm and accommodating. They welcomed Udi into their home, and from hence she became a member of the family. Udi would wake up every morning and greet Kalada's parents. She will then, with the aid of her cane, go round the house, trying the best she can with her blindness to carry out chores in the house. Udi, with time, became a very valuable member of the family. She became very respectful, kind, and considerate to others. She would humbly and respectfully talk to Kalada's parents and everyone around her. She sometimes accompanies Kalada to the market to sell the gains from his hunting, and they would laugh and chat about everything and nothing. Udi had almost forgotten that she was a princess until one night the old witch came to her in a dream. Princess Udi, she began, I see that you have changed for the better. You no longer talk to and treat people like trash. You are no longer rude and senseless. Now you can return to the palace as a princess. The next morning, Princess Udi woke up in her chambers in the palace, dressed as a princess with all her guards and attendants all in place. She looked up and saw the king and the queen smiling with teary eyes at her, and she was confused. It was then she was told that she had been unconscious for 3 full moons and they were worried about her. Princess Udi saw that they were truly worried about her, and she began to cry, apologizing to everyone for being rude and saucy. After a few days, everybody began to murmur and talk about the visible changes in Princess Udi. She would help the old women in the village, acknowledge and greet her older ones, even her mates. One day, as she was passing by the crossroad where she met Kalada when she was yet blind, she heard him laughing with his friends. She approached him. He just looked at her. She smiled at him. He smiled back, and she hugged him, and the rest was history. By the time King Aduko finished his story, the princess was already in tears. I'm happy to see you are touched by the story of Princess Udi, King Aduko continued, whilst hugging his daughter as she wept. I will be handing over this kingdom to you and your future husband. So love your subjects